Hey, Amy Walsh here with the Bureau of Tactical Imagination, coming back to you with part 2 of a little 3-part video series about the 3 phases of the branding process. So I created these videos for those of you who either are creating your own branding, and I have an expanded definition of branding as including not just visuals, but all the ways that you show up in your business, tell your story, and connect with people. For those of you who are doing all the pieces and parts of that yourself, or for those of you who are hiring different people to help you, but you want to feel really grounded in the vision of the brand. You want complete creative control of your brand's vision, even while you have specialists help you build the pieces. So there are 3 parts to the branding process that I work through with my clients and my customers and my students. And there are 3 phases really. 1 is listen, 2 is ideate, and 3 is communicate. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the ideation phase. So there's so much to say about this phase, and it's the funnest, most fruitful, sometimes frustrating part of the brand building process. For me, it's the most fun, but it can be the one that raises the most creative confidence, like can shake your creative confidence the most. So I want to demystify it a little bit, talk about it a little bit. In phase 1, which I covered very briefly in the first video and gave you one example of what phase 1 could look like, you're researching in that listening phase who you are as a creator and a communicator as the founder of the business. You're researching the work itself and what the work offers and what the vision is of the world that this work is helping bring into being, what the values are of the business, who the customers are, what the customers say and experience and need. So you're really researching the relationship between the business and the customers. And in that phase, you're also researching the larger culture that you're doing your work in. Because once you put something out into the world, it's absolutely influenced and affected by, and also affects the context, the larger context that it's in. And a lot of brand strategists and folks doing a brand don't explore that piece of it enough, which is a shame because that's where so much of the gold is in creating a brand that really can influence culture and be very alive in its industry. So in that phase 1, you're basically generating a whole bunch of raw material that you can use in this ideate phase, phase 2, to start creating possibilities for how to shape more intentionally how your brand goes out into the world. And this is the demystifying part. There are a lot of fun and simple and easy ways to do it. One of the ways that we can do it is, when I bring people through all of those questions in phase 1, a lot of visual ideas start to come up. When I ask people who they are as creators and communicators, what their cultural influences have been. Usually right there's a lot of visual stuff that comes up about the types of movies that they always were fascinated by, about the kind of music that they've always loved, these things that may or may not be directly connected to what the brand's going to do, but it gives us a lot of raw cultural material to look at. And often as the founder, the business that you're creating is often connected somehow. Your ideal clients and your audiences are often connected somehow to you, generationally, in different ways. So playing with all of those like pop cultural references and things can be a really fun way to play and to start. So I often have my clients and my students work on Pinterest boards where they gather lots and lots of imagery around all the different kinds of things that come up in the listen phase. So there might be a Pinterest board that comes up that has to do with the industry itself, a Pinterest board that has to do with the clients and the kinds of things the clients are struggling with, a Pinterest board that has to do with who you are as a creator. There's so many different ways to gather imagery around ideas. And in the ideate phase, we then use all of that imagery to play. It gives us ideas. So one thing I want to say is, in many industries, if you go out into the visual culture of it, say I'm going to go out into the visual culture of life coaches on Instagram, you're going to find a very narrow visual culture. There are trends kinds of sweeping through the space that everyone's using. For example, in the small business world, lots and lots and lots of people use desktop images of laptops and lattes, and like these simple, serene workspaces become the visual culture of what it means to be successful in business, which always was amazing to me, because there are thousands of ways to visually communicate ideas. And that's the most literal way, and it's powerful. It's, you're calling to what people want. They want a sense of peace and order and beauty and simplicity in their busy lives as business owners. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, it doesn't take much to disrupt the visual world of your industry and do something really different. And what gathering all of that material, that cultural material from the listen phase does, is it gives you all kinds of other things to look at. It gives you all kinds of other influences that could give you ideas for what you want to do. So suddenly you realize that you're looking at, Soviet era, posters, and you're looking at Dada collages, and you're looking at 1970s album covers, and you're looking at package design from Japan. You're kind of filling your cup with a bunch of influences and inspiration that are relevant in some way to who you are, to what your work is, and to what the culture is doing. And in the ideate phase, you get to literally and not literally, just collage ideas and images and thoughts together. So, in the image sense, you might start to imagine, well, what if my business was kind of in the style of like a 1990s sitcom? What would I do? How would that look? And even though you may know that that's not what you're going to do, to put your business through that filter, that cultural frame, will give you a bunch of ideas and inspiration. So in the ideate phase, I give my clients lots of little assignments, and we play lots of thought games like that, right? To kind of shake things up and stir the pot and imagine the business from a bunch of different vantage points in terms of look and feel and voice and copy, etc. So what I want to offer to you about this is to spend more time as you're thinking about your brand, and even set aside an hour here, an hour there, sometime in the next week, to gather images that interest and excite you, whether that's Pinterest or some other format. When we could go into libraries and bookstores more easily, I would send people to the art stacks and to the design stacks and the popular culture and different things. But gather a bunch of images that interest you and that you find compelling, beautiful, fun, weird, and just start to remind your whole system of the variety of options that you have, right? You do not have to just look at the websites of people in your industry for ideas about how to be who you are. You've got a universe of culture. Now, I want to make a little aside, is that this doesn't mean that you can appropriate from any culture, which is a whole other topic. But once we start putting things out into the world, we have to be really responsible about who we are as creators of culture in the larger culture, and what we're participating in and what we're resisting, right? So for example, if you're a white person, you don't want to start, or you're a settler person, you don't want to start using indigenous art forms, or, Black art forms, or anything like that. But aside from that, like, you are surrounded by a million options for how how your business can speak in a voice that will be different and really create like a new avenue of conversation and interest for your audience. So the two things are gather influences more than you already are, cast your net wide. And the second is what was the second one? Oh, ideate for longer. So give yourself little assignments and little prompts, like what if questions. Once you've gathered all this material, you can kind of go through it and say, well, what if my business did feel like kind of a fairyland with elves? What if my business did feel like a Matisse painting, you know? What if my business felt like a really vibrant party? What if my business felt like, you know, a clearing in the forest? So you can start to just apply these different elements of story and visuals to your work. And let that be open-ended, but give yourself material to work with, because the very worst thing is to basically have that syndrome of like the blank page syndrome, where you're staring at a blank page waiting for an idea to strike. Creativity, creative confidence, and creative ideas come from creative action, not from thought. It comes from a different place in our system. It's not a linear, like, rational thought process. It's something that is born of creative action. It's a dialogue with making. So that's what I want you to do in the ideate phase. Okay, on to part 3.